Hello my friends, welcome to my first, well no, this is not my first video of 2025. This is the first video I'm sitting down to film in the year of 2025. I actually kind of hate that it is 2025 because this will be the year that I myself turn 25, and that age just feels so old and scary to me. In my head, the age that I perceive myself as, I think permanently, is 17. I don't know why. I did not experience any significant trauma at that age, but I do not think of myself as a 25-year-old person, and I know I don't act like it. I still have stuffed animals on my bed. Since I just mentioned I will be turning 25 and birthdays, all that. What do you guys think my zodiac sign is? I don't think I've ever mentioned it. I don't think I've ever mentioned when my birthday is, so I want you guys to guess. I want you guys to tell me what energy I give off. I did just get a comment on one of my videos of someone asking me what my sign is, and I did reply back, so do not cheat. But that's also partially what inspired me to ask you guys. But today we are here to talk about some of my absolute favorite books that I read in the past year, 2024. I personally don't subscribe to the 5-star rating system, so that is why I'm not calling these books my 5-star reads. But hypothetically, if I did still rate books that way, these books most likely would be 5 stars. So, and then after we've done all that, I also want to talk to you about some of the books that I'm very excited and looking forward to. Books that I know I absolutely will 100% be reading within the next year. Some of them are new releases, some of them are just books that I really want to get to. So my reading goal for the year was to read 100 books. Do you want to guess how many I actually read? 53. Now, as someone who used to thrive off of academic validation and getting high grades, a 53% would have made me want to crawl into a hole and die. However, we are not in that place anymore. 53 books is still a lot. It is okay that we did not achieve our goal. Did I set my 2025 reading goal to 100 books? Yes, I did. I just think it would be really fun and cool to say that I read 100 books in a year. This is my pile of my 2024 favorites. I'm not going over them in order. I feel like a lot of these books are just hallmarks in my reading journey, books that left a mark on me personally, books that I know I will never stop thinking about, books that introduced me to new authors or cemented favorite authors for me. Now, if I did have to pick an absolute favorite, I think it would have to be The Trauma Cleaner by Sarah Krasnostein? The Trauma Cleaner. I don't know if I can express how deeply this book made me feel things. But this is nonfiction. It is a memoir about a woman named Sandra Pankhurst, and she has made a living as a trauma cleaner. So she cleans up crime scenes, hoarding situations, death scenes. She is called in to help out people whose surroundings and environment have fallen into such a state of like derelict, that's a great word, due to mental health illnesses, whatever the situation may be. In this, we rotate between current day snippets of her clients and how she's helping these people and a little bit about what their situations are. There are often people suffering with immense amounts of mental strife, but then we're also getting Sandra's backstory in her history, her life, how she grew up. We are learning all about this woman in between. And the way that the author chronicles this woman's life is genuinely so beautiful. I was in awe reading about her life and everything that she has gone through. There is obviously some very sensitive subject material in this book. Sandra, the woman who this book is about, has also gone through immense amounts of trauma herself. So some of the trauma that her clients are currently going through, she's also gone through herself. Another thing that I absolutely loved about this book was the way that the author frames mental illness and trauma. She does it so delicately. So like, not only is it a wonder to read about this woman's story, Sandra's story in general, but it's also the way the author decided to tell it. The writing, the structure, the framing, every single thing about this book, raw. That is a good word to describe this book. It is very raw. For example, one piece of writing that I absolutely loved in this book. Our author went along with Sandra to a lot of her clients' meetings, watched her through her work. In this little snippet, she is describing the smell of someone's home and surroundings that have fallen into decay. She says, "We have no single word for it, this smell. We have no adjective to describe how profoundly repulsive and unsettling it is. This smell is the lingering presence of all the physical things we put into and wash off of ourselves. But it is equally the ineffable smell of defeat, of isolation, of self-hate, or more simply, it is the smell of pain." Just absolutely immaculate writing. If you were going to read any book from this video, I think it should be this one, especially if you were in the mood to feel some extreme emotion. Next on my pile is a book that I know I have talked about many times now on my channel, and that is Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White. I am telling you, if you miss that peak 2010 YA dystopian era, this will give it to you. I said in one of the original videos where I talked about this that this felt so nostalgic to that era while still having such a completely unique storyline. But in this, our main character Benji has just escaped from a super religious cult that he was raised in his whole entire life. Said cult has also recently just brought upon the Armageddon that has wiped out a huge chunk of the Earth's population, all of the non-believers. So that is what gives us this post-apocalyptic setting. They've also created these monster creature human being hybrid type things. They're kind of an amalgamation of just a bunch of dead bodies and body parts, and they are supposedly very deadly and very scary. So stakes are high. So not only is Benji fighting this cult and fighting these monsters, he is also fighting becoming a monster himself. This cult, extremely busy, has also infected him with a deadly bioweapon that is slowly but surely turning him into the king of all of these creatures, so to speak. And Benji, in his final form, once he has completed this transformation, is supposed to be able to take out the rest of the non-believers that the Armageddon missed on the first sweep. Now, another really important facet to the story is the fact that Benji is trans. So not only is he dealing with like the end of the world and all of these external evil factors, he is also dealing with a lot of things internally. Finding acceptance within like a found family, fighting against this cult that wants to recapture him, that does not obviously accept him as trans because an evil religious cult, not the most progressive. But like I said, this storyline was giving me everything I missed in that 2010 YA dystopian era while still being so unique. I would have read an 800-page version of this book because the background information, the world building, the history about this cult, that was all just as interesting to me as what was like currently unfolding in the main storyline. Even the author's note, like, do not skip an Andrew Joseph White author letter because it is going to be phenomenal. It is going to get you fired up. It gets me hyped up every single time. Now this book I read all the way back in the beginning of 2024, so it has been quite a while, but I still think about it constantly, and that is I Am Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This is about a couple on their way to visit the boyfriend's parents for the first time. Well, the girlfriend's first time visiting the boyfriend's parents. We are in the girlfriend's perspective. She is recounting the history of their relationship, and then obviously she is narrating the events as they are unfolding. And that is all I'm going to say, because I do think it is best to go into this knowing the absolute bare minimum. I know that summary sounds very bland, sounds very boring, but I would venture to say that this is one of the scariest books I've ever read. Now, disclaimer, scary is different for everyone, okay? I read a lot of horror books, and 9 times out of 10, I don't actually find them scary. I find them entertaining, shocking, gross, disturbing, but am I physically scared? No. This book, however, I could not read it late at night. I had to stop reading this before I went to bed because I was scared that I was going to have nightmares. In fact, there is a scene in this book that is a recurring nightmare for me. I also used to have a recurring nightmare as a child that Jack Skellington from The Nightmare Before Christmas murdered my father and then married my mother and then also wanted to murder me. I was a very anxious child, and that translated into my dreams. But what scares me personally is that deeply unsettling feeling you get when you know something isn't right, but you don't know what it is. It is a slow buildup. It is a pile-on of all of these subtle little details of things that are off. Nothing is jumping out at you. No one's getting their head cut off, but it's that feeling. When I get that feeling in my bones, I know that I am scared. And this book just executes that feeling, elicits that feeling perfectly. The whole premise is that our main character is feeling these things. If our main character is feeling that way, I'm gonna feel that way. I do fully immerse myself in every single book that I read. And yes, that is exhausting sometimes. Speaking of a book that is a bit mentally exhausting, so to speak, I also decided to read The Perks of Being a Wallflower for the very first time. Yes, up until that point in the year 2024, I had never read this book, and I'd also never seen the movie. I know, it is shameful. One thing I've really been trying to do is read more banned books, and this is one of them, I think, because... Is it because of the gays? Why is this book banned? Reasons for censorship include content considered to be anti-family, sexually explicit, and content involving homosexuality, offensive language, drugs and alcohol, nudity, descriptions of masturbation, and suicide. Well, I cannot argue that there is sensitive subject matter in this book. For some reason though, I did not think of this book as being as heavy as it actually is. I know that the movie is obviously extremely popular, and I guess in my mind a movie that widely loved by the public. I didn't think it would be that heavy. I will say after watching the movie though, I do think the book hits much harder. But this is about a teen named Charlie and his transition into his first year of high school as someone who is very withdrawn, observant, introverted, and as you read you learn that he has gone through some very traumatic things in his life. In this, he is also befriended by two upperclassmen who kind of sweep him up in this whirlwind of socialization and meeting new people. So we're getting his deep thinking perspective of all of the people around him and what's going on in their lives on top of his life, just the messiness of being a teenager. But again, that is all on top of some really deep themes and experiences that he himself experiences, but also some of these other characters experience as well. At the very end of this, you also find out something else about Charlie's life that is very disturbing and very heartbreaking. As you're reading this, you know that Charlie is a very complex character, and through his current experiences, you know there's something else in his past that we don't quite know about yet. And I think the author does a really good job of depicting mental health, but also the aftermath of a traumatic event and suppression and realization and just what someone goes through after something extremely traumatic has happened to them. Also, just as a sensitive, introverted person myself, there were a lot of quotes and pieces of writing in here that I feel like I really resonated with. And I really like when I read books that sort of write out or describe like thoughts and feelings I know I've had but can't name, thoughts and feelings that I myself can't articulate, I guess. This is for all my deep thinking girlies. If you haven't already read it, I know I'm late to the game on this one. Just make sure you're in the correct mental state. Now lastly, for my 2024 favorites, I just need to talk about my girl, R.F. Kuang. It is very safe to say that she was my favorite author of the year and currently my favorite author. And I did read a few of her books last year, so I just need to talk about her as a whole because every single thing that I read from her just instantly becomes a favorite. Everything I read from her feels like a gut punch, but I keep going back for more. Her range as an author is just so impressive to me. I love how like steeped in history most of her books are, while still incorporating fantasy and still having such like an emotional, fictional narrative to them. In 2024, I read Babel for the first time. This was a part of my dark academia reading vlog, and as you can see, well loved. I also decided to continue the Poppy War trilogy. I read the first book back in November 2023, I think. I really loved it, but I just ended up getting sidetracked and I did not continue the trilogy. But then at the end of 2024, I decided to reread the Poppy War, which double trauma. Read this, finished it, loved it again. And then as we were going into this year, I finished the Dragon Republic. And y'all, I am so invested in this series, which this actually is my segue into me talking about some of the books I know I'll be reading in 2025. At the very top of the list, I have The Burning God, which is the third and final book of this series. I know I am going to be emotionally distraught by the end of all of this. I have seen so many videos and so many TikToks of people's reactions while finishing this book, and I'm scared. I am dying to start this, but at the same time, I do not want to know how it ends because Miss Rebecca, she does not hold back. She does not hold back when it comes to the fates of her characters. So stay tuned. But the fun does not stop there with Miss R.F. Kuang. No, it does not, because she is giving us a new release later in this year. She's coming out with a new book called Catabasis. I have seen some people say that that is not the correct pronunciation. I don't care. Let me say this. All of you bitches that got the arc, watch your back. I really don't know if I've ever been so jealous in my entire life. Anyway, Catabasis, the premise of her new release. We have two PhD students studying magic. So we're back in fantasy, but they are two academic rivals who have to journey into hell to save their academic advisor, so their advisor can write them recommendation letters. I did see in an interview from her that she set out to create like an Alice in Wonderland-esque world where things are very nonsensical, things are shifting around you as the character is going deeper and deeper into the underworld, things are changing. So I'm very excited to see how she executes that. And yes, you heard it right, I said academic rivals. I do think we are getting some romance in this one, which that is going to tear me to pieces because none of her other books are romance. However, she gives us crumbs. She writes these moments of such deep love and deep connection between some of her characters in her other books, and I eat that shit up like it's my last meal every single time. So an entire book of it, I am gnawing at the bars of my enclosure for it. Speaking of gnawing on bars, another new release we have this year is Sunrise on the Reaping, which is the newest installment in the Hunger Games series. This is another prequel to the main trilogy. This one is about Haymitch and his games, which happen to be the 50th games, so it's a quarter quell. Things are getting mixed up, things are getting special. Haymitch is one of my favorite characters ever in the movies and the books. I love that man. I am very excited to read about his games. Luckily, I think we only have to wait till March for this, I think. March 18th. But I think before this comes out, if I can fit it in, I would love to do a reread of the entire trilogy because I've only read it once. No, I think I've read Hunger Games and Catching Fire twice, but I read them all back in their heyday when they were poppin', back in the height of the era, and I have not read it since, so not as an adult with a fully formed brain. Fully formed for the most part. And I think it is unfortunately becoming all too relevant in our current day in society. So within the next month, I would love to reread those books in preparation for Sunrise on the Reaping. Another series / world I really want to get into this year is Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere, which that is going to be a huge undertaking. If you don't know what the Cosmere is, it is a collection of multiple series, short stories, novellas, all written by Brandon Sanderson that take place in the same universe. Kind of like how ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, Crescent City, they're all intermingled with each other. That's what this is. Now this, however, is split into 2 main series and then multiple novellas and short stories and special projects. I believe it is a total of 24 different books. I may or may not be slightly off in that number, but it is over 20 books. There is a specific reading order. Of course, you can read it however you want, but I do really want to try and read it in the suggested order. Like, you're not supposed to read the series all the way through. You're supposed to sprinkle in the standalones and novellas. I think you read the first part of one series first, and then you go to the other series, and then you go back to part 2 of the first series. So again, huge undertaking, but I love nothing more than getting completely sucked into a new world. Everything is connected. There's so much of it to enjoy. If I really like these books, it is a dream that there are 20 of them to read. I do own the first book that you're supposed to start with. This is Mistborn. This is the first book in the first major series. I've heard nothing but amazing things about Brandon Sanderson's books, and also Brandon Sanderson as a person. I've seen that he's been very supportive of all of the romantasy girlies kind of transitioning into high epic fantasy, which is me. Hi. But we will see how this journey goes as the year goes on. But that is what I have on my list for some of my most anticipated reads that I'm looking forward to this year. Of course, I'll be reading more books. I'll be reading other books. If you guys have any books that you really want to see me read, let me know. Any books that you're anticipating this year so we can read them together. Also, my top books of the year of 2024. I know we're already a couple weeks into January, and knowing me, I probably won't upload this till February, but better late than never, right? But thank you guys for watching. I really hope you enjoyed. I really hope you decide to stick around, and I'll see you in the next one.